If, hypothetically speaking, you had a phone call with him today, what would that conversation be like? What would you say to him?
Back off. One, we'll never be the 51st state. We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect our sovereignty. Two, we will respond to tariffs with retaliation, and I will use the dollars raised for those tariffs to save jobs and companies that are directly affected by a trade war. But also, we need to be strong here at home. Under Carney, he supported Trudeau's decision to block pipelines and resource jobs in Canada while he invested in American coal and moved his headquarters from Canada to New York City, just like Trump wanted.
Today, you've been talking about Mark Carney at recent events, saying that he accusing him of sneaky accounting, posting about him on social media. And you've also said that you would eliminate the deficit. When do you think you would be able to do that?
Well, it'll be in my platform, our fiscal plan to eliminate the Liberal deficit. It's funny that you ask about the deficit, because remember, 10 years ago, the Liberals promised there would only be 3 deficits, 3 small deficits that would boost growth, create investment, and help the middle class. What's been the result? Well, the 3 deficits became 9 deficits, and then those 9 deficits added $700 billion of debt and a lot of inflation. Investment went down. Our growth is the worst in the G7. And as for that famous middle class that was going to do better, what has happened to them is that 80% of them pay more income tax than they did before the Liberals. And not a single middle class family can afford a new home in any of our big cities. Now Mark Carney is repeating exactly the same promises that Justin Trudeau made. 3 small deficits that he says will be great for the middle class and growth. Well, the results will be exactly the same. It'll mean higher taxes, more inflation, bigger lineups at the food banks. That has been the result over the last 10 years of the Trudeau Liberals, and over the last 5 years during which Carney has been Trudeau's economic advisor. So if you want an end to these Liberal deficits that have driven up the costs for middle-class families, you have to vote for a real change with a common-sense Conservative government, and we're the ones that will deliver it.
So if we're talking about a timeline for you to get rid of the deficit, what would that be?
Well, the sooner the better. It's a Liberal deficit. So we have to get rid of Liberal waste. Under Trudeau-Carney, Liberals, they have, for example, added 100,000 public servants. I'll be reducing the number of bureaucrats. They've doubled the budget for corporate welfare. I will be cutting that. They doubled the budget for consultants. I'll be cutting that. I'll be cutting back on foreign aid to bring our money back home to Canada.
The latest polling shows that there is narrowing between the Liberals and the Conservatives. Why do you think that is? And do you think that has anything to do with moving away from our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and moving toward a new leader?
Well, I think Mr. Carney is a very sneaky guy. He has been Trudeau's economic advisor for the last 5 years. And what has been the result? Housing costs have doubled. Lineups at food banks have doubled. The national debt has doubled. He has helped Justin Trudeau impose the carbon tax and pushed for that tax to go up even more. And now he plans a real sneaky trick. He's going to hide the carbon tax for 2 months right before the election so that it will not appear at the gas station. But after the election's over, he'll bring in a much bigger carbon tax. That's why the people keep calling him Carbon Tax Carney. And so if you want a change from the disastrous Trudeau-Carney Liberal policies of the last 10 years, you have to elect common sense Conservatives who will axe the taxes for everyone for good, who will slash bureaucracy, consultants, corporate welfare, foreign aid to bring down debt, taxes, and inflation, who will take GST off new homes and remove bureaucracy so that we can build houses people can afford. That's what real change is, and only common sense Conservatives can deliver it.
Let's talk about President Donald Trump. How would you handle him if, hypothetically speaking, you had a phone call with him today? What would that conversation be like? What would you say to him?
Back off. One, we'll never be the 51st state. We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect our sovereignty. Two, we will respond to tariffs with retaliation, and I will use the dollars raised for those tariffs to save jobs in companies that are directly affected by a trade war, but also cut taxes for workers and businesses so that we can bring home the investment Liberals have driven south of the border. We need to be strong here at home. Under Carney, he supported Trudeau's decision to block pipelines and resource jobs in Canada while he invested in American coal and moved his headquarters from Canada to New York City, just like Trump wanted. We don't need a prime minister who's going to put America's economy first, as Carney did. We need a prime minister who will put Canada first. That means passing a big, bold, patriotic, bring it home tax cut on work, investment, home building, energy, making stuff in Canada, so we can bring back that investment and become a self-reliant country that rewards its companies for paying high wages, that produces its own resources and trades across Canada. That's what we're going to do when I'm prime minister, and that will make us strong to stare down Trump and any of the threats he puts forward.
For months, you've said that Canada is broken. Now, in the wake of the tariff threats, of the threat of becoming the 51st state, do you still think that Canada is broken?
I think the Liberals have broken everything. They broke our housing market by doubling housing costs. They broke in the household budgets by raising carbon taxes and income taxes, with twice as many people lined up at food banks as there were before the Trudeau-Carney Liberals. They've broken our criminal justice system with catch and release that has allowed criminals to rampage through our streets, gun crime having doubled. They've broken families with the fentanyl crisis that they unleashed by legalizing hard drugs and leaving our borders open. We have more people dead of fentanyl after a decade of the Liberals than died fighting for Canada in the Second World War. So they broke a lot of things, and it is patriotic to point out what is broken so that you can fix it. I mean, Liberals, they're trying to gaslight Canadians into saying, if you point out any of the problems that they caused after 10 years in power, you're unpatriotic. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Patriotism is about having an honest conversation about the enormous damage the Liberals did to this country. And by the way, I won't take any lessons on patriotism from Mark Carney, who took jobs and money out of Canada to put them in the States, in China, and in the Middle East. I won't take any lessons from the Liberals on patriotism after they have been lowering our flag and putting down our history for the last 10 years. Conservatives will put Canada first, and that means fixing what Liberals broke.
We're a week away from our own election here in Ontario, where we choose our new premier, and it shows that Doug Ford, leader of the Progressive Conservatives, has a healthy lead. What's your working relationship like with him, and who do you endorse, if you endorse anyone?
Well, my working relationship is great with all the premiers. I'll work with anybody who will put Canada first. Anyone of any party who's prepared to work together, for example, to take taxes off home building. I'm going to go to all the premiers and say, look, I'm going to take the GST off new homes. Will you take your provincial sales tax off those homes? That would save over $100,000 for a young family trying to buy a home. Then let's pressure the municipalities to cut their home building taxes. I'll say to them, look, let's knock down interprovincial trade barriers. I'll give you a bonus every time you remove a barrier to interprovincial trade so that we can start trading between Canadians rather than giving all our goods to the Americans. So no matter who Ontarians choose or other provinces choose as their premier, I'll always work with that person to put our country first.